Sometimes I feel like some bands I just can't say much about, and it's principally just because what they're doing seems like it's a lot of fun. This is kind of like going outside of the plane of, professionalism as a reviewer and just, kind of spitting for real here. I look at a band like Toxic Holocaust, I look at a guy like Joel Grind, who, obviously built this idea, this band, this image from the ground up for Toxic Holocaust, and it just seems like he's, having a blast doing it. Toxic Holocaust, one of the bands that, along with some others, really seems to have revitalized this new wave of crossover thrash that we've seen in America, especially on the West Coast, ever since the 2000s. And with their album here, Chemistry of Consciousness, in 2013, you can definitely kind of understand, if you're new to the whole idea, if you're new to Toxic Holocaust and the idea of crossover thrash, as they call it, exactly what it's all about. You can understand exactly either A, what the appeal is, or B, why this really does have such an awesome viability to it. And the principal reason is because of the inspirations. The inspirations from classic thrash and speed metal, especially from the 1980s, punk music, just dirty music, the underground. There's a lot of great influences that a band like Toxic Holocaust is really able to channel up, and especially whenever it is essentially a pet project for somebody. It's essentially a project that Joel Grind has harvested and has really grown now for more than a decade. In fact, we're going on closer to, almost 15 years. I mean, wow. There's just a lot of great things that have happened here. They've released a handful of albums, a lot of splits, some EPs. I mean, they just do, he's just relentless with this. And, that just seems like a lot of fun. It seems like a lot of fun. Some people have all the luck. But let's talk about Chemistry of Consciousness. I don't really say much because it's pretty straightforward. This is 12 tracks, and if you haven't listened to Toxic Holocaust before, then definitely pick this one up and check it out. I'm saying that beforehand, principally because what I'm about to say is going to be a whirlwind. It's going to go by like that because there's not really much to say. This is extremely straightforward. This is something that doesn't necessarily get too unadulteratedly complex. It's not something that goes completely over-the-top crazy. This is not something that needs to. This is something where the more direct it is, the more he's able to just hit you square in the face as hard as he fucking can with this kind of crossover blend of thrash and punk. The better, really. And the reason why it's better is because it just is able to flow very, very nicely from track 1 on to track number 12. Imagine, think about this. Let's really consider this for a moment, and this is me kind of way back machining this bitch. Imagine if whenever the Misfits came out in the late, in the 70s and the early 1980s, whenever they were doing their albums with Glenn Danzig, imagine if they worried all that much about musical evolution. Imagine if Glenn Danzig and the Misfits, or the Misfits in general, cared all that much about musical deviation. If they cared about, each and every one of their songs sounding, miles different than one another. Now, of course, the musically minded and the Misfits fans will say, well, hey, there are differences. And yeah, there are. That's something that we definitely have to admit. But imagine whenever they were going through this whole idea, the early stages of their career, that they just said to themselves, well, you know what, this song really needs to have more of a progressive death metal style. Of course, it hadn't been invented yet. Or this one has to have a little bit of a crossover pop appeal. This one can be straight punk, but this one right here, this needs to be a little bit more on the disco wagon. Imagine if they did that. Imagine how boring a Misfits album back then would have been. Yeah, the Misfits didn't have to deviate all that much back then, but their albums kicked ass, principally because there was just attitude. There was attitude upon attitude upon attitude. Attitude! But there was also something else that was there, and that was an unadulterated, uncompromising, just heaviness and just, one-of-a-kind sound to it. Now, while Toxic Holocaust may not necessarily sound one-of-a-kind, see who gets that reference, they definitely have the attitude. The attitude! You need the attitude. And Toxic Holocaust oozes attitude. And that's one reason why this band is a ton of fun. They don't need a lot of deviation. Joel Grind does not need to be Yngwie fucking Malmsteen in order for a Toxic Holocaust album to be great. And that's the reason why these albums are fun listens. And that's the reason why these albums are just plain good. Because they don't need to deviate. Sure, it may sound like a boring concept, but this album's 30 minutes in length. This is a 30-minute hurricane. that you endure whenever you listen to it, and it's fun to listen to, and it's an enjoyable ride. These guys are a lot of fun live. These guys are just a lot of fun to listen to in the studio, and you know what? If you're driving down the highway, it's 1 a.m., there's nobody else there because you're in the middle of fuck nowhere, toss on this album and see if you're not tempted to speed. Unless you're already speeding, then speed more. A lot of fun, like this album. Like I said, this is nothing that's going to necessarily set the world on fire. This is not anything that's necessarily going to win any Album of the Year awards on this channel, or really maybe on that many channels, but it's just so much fun that you don't care. You know, I don't... If Joel Grind cared about notoriety and things like that, and, you know, having Album of the Year plaques, trophies, or whatever the hell I give out, which is nothing, then Joel Grind wouldn't be doing what he's doing, and it wouldn't be as fun. So, really like this. I really encourage you to check this out. Some of the some of the tracks that I enjoyed the most were Acid Fuzz, Awaken the Serpent. Wargasm was a lot of fun. The title track, Chemistry of Consciousness. And also I Serve. I really liked the second half of this disc. Rat Eater wasn't bad. Really just... It's hard for me to pick and choose, principally because each and every one of these songs has something for me. And it has the aggressiveness, it has the attitude, and that's why I dig it. Probably give it an 8. I know everyone's going to be like, 8? He gives everything an 8. It's an 8. It's 4 out of 5 stars. Whenever you review as much as I do, numbers are going to tend to repeat. Though in 2014, that might change. Check this out. I recommend it.